And that's the official code term, but it's also, we mostly know it as door lock monitoring. Now, for some of you what do you mean by door lock monitoring? Well, here I just show a simple anatomy of an elevator system here. And what we are really interested in is in two major components. I'm sure most of you had written an elevator in your past history here. But there's two components, the car doors. Those are the doors that obviously are on the elevator that open and closes. And then we also have landing doors. Those are the doors that are on the hallway. Now, each of these actually have a switch that we can monitor to the controller to tell us whether the doors are open or whether the doors are closed. And obviously the elevator is only allowed to run when the doors are closed. So there's a switch on the car door side, and there's a switch on every landing in the hall to tell us, hey, if the doors are open or if the doors are closed, allowing us obviously to safely travel, among other signals obviously the elevator is required to have. So on old control systems, didn't really care. Everything was pretty much monitored in what's called a string fashion. All the door locks, interlocks, gate switch, everything was monitored all in one slew string for the controller. So once all of them have been made up, it says to the elevator controller, hey, the doors are closed, you're free to go. The problem has been in the past is that when mechanics get on the job sites and they're having a problem with one of these switches, elevators shut down, people are trapped. Now the elevator mechanic has to go in, get the people out. They want to be able to bypass that portion of the circuit of the doors to be able to get the people out and run the car manually. That's all fine and dandy, but the problem then obviously lies is that they get the people out of the elevator, they tend to take the circuit that they bypassed of the controller. Okay, so they forget about, well, I bypassed my door lock in the hall or in the car or both, for that matter, and they tend to walk out the building with that jumper bypassing the safety circuits for the car door and the hall locks in place. But what would that do? Well, that tells the elevator controller that, hey, my doors are closed even though they are not closed. Exactly. And these are where a lot of accidents have occurred, where the elevator would run with the doors open, where people have gotten hurt and killed as well over the years. So this is the way the old system used to do, monitor all of them one shot, didn't care if they all were one or both or all of them were bypassed. Once it saw everything was made, it says, go ahead, you're allowed to run the elevator. So the code was changed to obviously prevent this from happening. So basically the solution was twofold. Okay? One was to install code where to prevent the operation of the elevator, and monitor the position of the actual car doors. So even if the car doors is not in a fully closed position, even if that contact is bypassed, it will not allow the elevator to leave the floor. Okay? That's number one. So now we have to monitor the position of the car. It will not allow the elevator fully open, partially open, or fully closed. The car doors are not fully closed, even though if those contacts, thinking that it's locked, are made, you're not allowed to leave the floor. The other portion of the code was to prevent the power closing of the doors if those contacts have been bypassed. So if somebody did leave a jumper bypassing the signals to tell us, hey, the doors are closed, even though the doors are open, we will prevent the elevator doors from closing and leaving the floor. Those are the two new code requirements instituted to prevent from these accidents to occur. And on the new elevator control system, now we got to monitor those contacts separately, right? Where before everything was monitored in one string, we wouldn't be able to tell if one is bypassed versus the other. So now we have to monitor them individually. Top locks, the top hall door, the middle ones, and the bottom ones, and the gate switch independently. So if we see that any one of them have been bypassed and the doors are open, shut the elevator down, don't leave the floor. So if we see that any one of them have been bypassed, so now we have on the newer control systems, have to now individually monitor these signals to indicate if there's any kind of a bypass or jumper condition. A little bit of a code history here. This is kind of an interesting fact here. The door lock monitoring actually was instituted in 1996. Now, ASME, not sure if all of you are familiar with, that stands for the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. They're the ones who pretty much dictate the elevator code. They publish a new code every 3 years to tell you what you need to do in order to safely run an elevator. So they instituted in 1996 door lock monitoring, the requirements we just had gone over. So they instituted pretty much most of the elevator manufacturers in 96, 97 then obviously complied to the new code door lock monitoring requirements. But New York City is a different animal. New York City pretty much goes to its own beat. New York City is a different animal. In 2003, they finally adopted the 96 code for door lock monitoring and everything else, but they said we don't want door lock monitoring. We want everything in the 1996 code, and again, that's the code that the whole national country follows, and all the other states. But New York says, well, we're going to adapt 1996, but you know what? We don't want door lock monitoring. On all the other states, for whatever reason. But New York says, well, we're going to adapt 1996, but you know what? We don't want door lock. Now, in 2008, they said, you know what? We're going to change our mind, and now we want door lock monitoring to be included on all new installations from 2008, 2009, and upwards. But that has also a bit of a caveat to that flavor as well. When they adopted the 2008 code for door lock monitoring for New York City, they wanted to work except for fire phase 2 operation. Okay? Now, fire phase 2, maybe for some of you who don't know, that's when the fireman actually has control of the elevator under a fire service emergency condition. That's the fireman who can be able to operate the elevator independently, okay, in an emergency evacuation procedure. So we said, okay, New York City says, give me door lock monitoring, but have it not work on phase 2, fire service phase 2. Now that was kind of an unwritten rule. They kind of never made it official, okay, that they did not want it to work under phase 2. So some control manufacturers complied, others had not. Now in actually 2014, they finally had made it so that now an official notice that have the door lock monitoring work except on fire phase 2 operation. Okay, and that was actually officially released in 2014 by the New York City Construction Code. Okay, so anything in after the fact of 2014 that they're verifying that the door lock monitoring does not only work on automatic operation, but as well as on not work on fire phase 2 operation from that. And then also in 2014, they mandated that all existing controllers in New York City have to have some sort of door lock monitoring circuit on their control systems. Okay, that happens to have come about, unfortunately, also from an accident that maybe some of you might have heard in 2010, 2011, where a lawyer was killed in an elevator. She was entering a lobby elevator, doors were open. Mechanic was working on the elevator, left the jumper accidentally in place. She went in to try to cross the threshold to get into the elevator, and the elevator took off with the doors open, and unfortunately killed her. So that's when the New York City says, you know what, we got to do something about that. And that's when it says, okay, you got to have some means of door lock monitoring on all control systems installed, new, or even going back 30 years. Okay, so every single elevator in New York City have to have some sort of door lock monitoring capability. And all of these elevators have to comply by 2020. That's the deadline. So all the elevators in New York City have to have door lock monitoring by January 1st of 2020. Okay, for that.
How many don't have it?
A lot. The DOB guesstimates that to have door lock monitoring installed going back on existing systems are about 40,000 elevators you're talking about. So you're talking about going back on 40,000 elevators and installing some kind of a door lock monitoring on these elevator systems within the next less than 2 years. So that's the kind of a dilemma that we're in, and not just us as well as our contractors, obviously, that have these elevators on maintenance that obviously have to comply with the building and their customers and clients as well. Right? But this is kind of a guideline of the history and how door lock monitoring had come about from '96 for the National Code into how it was incepted in New York City. Talk about, okay, which elevators require door lock monitoring? Does every single elevator have to have door lock monitoring or not? What are some of the scenarios and obstacles regarding installing door lock monitoring on existing systems? And what are some of the solutions for existing controllers to be able to comply with door lock monitoring? So, does my elevator need door lock monitoring? Well, two requirements that you need to have door lock monitoring. All automatic passenger or automatic freight have to have door lock monitoring. Number one. Number two, power operated doors that are mechanically coupled with the landing door. So what that means is that the car doors and the hall doors obviously open and close together. Right? That's your full automatic elevator that we use pretty much every day. Okay? Needs to have door lock monitoring. And power operated car doors. So the car doors open and close automatically, but you have a manual swing hall doors. I'm sure some of you have written those elevators, right, in apartment buildings. You got to manually open the hall door to get inside the elevator. And those are primarily in apartment complex that you see that kind of door operation. So those are the requirements that you need to have door lock monitoring. Okay? Vertical biparting freight doors don't comply, obviously, for door lock monitoring. These are just automatic passenger or automatic freights that have either the car doors that are coupled mechanically to the landing doors or automatic car doors that have manual swing hall doors. Need to have door lock monitoring. How about Galaxy controls? Obviously, we've been doing Galaxy controls since 2000, version Galaxy #1. So what do we need to do in terms of our Galaxy product lines? Okay, Galaxy 1 and 2, from 2000 to 2002, we're going to be providing our own door monitoring panel to be able to comply with door lock monitoring. Okay, we won't be able to upgrade the software on Galaxy 1 nor Galaxy 2 for door lock monitoring, so we're going to supply a unit panel, which I'll mention in a minute, to comply with door lock monitoring. Now, mind you, Galaxy 1 and 2 already have door lock monitoring in place. Okay. We've already had them in place where we can monitor, and if anybody detects that a bypass gate, we shut the elevator down. The problem with the component that we don't comply with is the fire service compliant for New York City. That needs to be added. But Galaxy 3 and 4 are software upgrades on older jobs, again, that have door lock monitoring that we've had, but don't have the fire service phase 2 component of that. So Galaxy 3 and 4 on older versions from the last, I'd say, 12 months or before, when we instituted the fire phase 2 monitoring feature, would require a software upgrade on controllers. So for those of you that get phone calls, especially in sales, customers say, I got a Galaxy from 2006, 2007, 2009. What do I need to do for complying with code door lock monitoring? They would require just an upgraded software from us. Sure. Yeah.
Just so everybody knows, whenever we get calls for existing jobs, Galaxy 4, then we go through the help desk ticket process and go through the change.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly. Okay. So again, so all these controls already have door lock monitoring in play, except for the fire phase 2 component that New York City had added onto it. Now, what about all other controls that are non-Galaxy related, such as exactly we have GL relay logic controllers, PLC controllers, and non-GL controllers? What do we do to comply with door lock monitoring for those kind of control systems? Put in a G4 if you can do it in the next 18 months, 40,000 elevators, yes. But if you can't, obviously, then you have another solution. And the solution is we had developed our own door fault monitoring interface panel. Okay, that will interface and retrofit to any foreign equipment. All right, relay logic, solid state, PLC controller that's going to be out there on the market. Again, designed to meet the criteria, the code for door lock monitoring, as we had mentioned, okay, to be able to detect the status of the door's position, as well as the status of the door locks themselves, and obviously inhibit the elevator from running when any of those fault conditions occur. Now, this panel, we again worked on it for quite some time. We try to keep it as generic as possible, because obviously the controllers that are out there are vast in nature in terms of the different types of control products that you can run into. So we have a panel in here that we have actually universal inputs, and those are the inputs actually that we use on the MOVFR. I'm sure some of you know those. Those are the universal inputs that will work anywhere from 24 to 250 volts AC or DC, because again, on all controllers you can have 24 volt DC, 110 volts, 220 volts, all different variations there of voltages that you can encounter. So we use the universal inputs that will be able to be applicable to any of that range. We have separate commons for our circuits, because you will have separate commons depending on the circuit that we're going to be working on there. It's designed again for front swing doors and also for front and rear. And we have an onboard diagnostics LED, LCD indicator, as well as an onboard buzzer to indicate when there is a fault. It says, hey, I got a problem over here. Come and take a look, see what's going on. Okay? So we have our own door fault monitoring board that we can be able to adapt onto foreign equipments to meet the requirement. Now, what do we need to do, pretty much? What is it required to have? The door lock monitoring. Obviously, the door lock monitoring unit is going to be installed right next to the controller of the existing system on here in the machine room. Then we have our elevator cab, where we have a door operator and we have a car operating panel. And what are some of the signals that we need? Well, we need to know the door closed, door open limit, because we need to know the status of the doors. That's number one. And also door position monitor, DPM. Okay, obviously on our MOVFR we have a DPM signal. We also have to monitor what? Fire phase 2, because again in New York City they don't want door lock monitoring to be functional on fire phase 2 operation. So we need to monitor the fire phase 2 key switch inside the car operating panel. This is your traveling cable, right, that goes from the elevator. And this is kind of a halfway junction box, if some applications have it, that obviously the signals will run back up to the controller up in the machine room. So this is a traveling cable that sends the signals back up from the elevator to the control room, wherever it happens to be, either in the overhead or it could be in the basement. It depends on the application. What else do we need? Well, we also need to know, for example, fire phase 1. So we have to know when we're in phase 1 operation in order for us to be able to go in phase 2. We need to know also the door locks for each floor, the statuses, the gate switch, okay? So we have to know obviously if the gate in the car is closed or open, okay? This is the riser obviously where the wires from the shaft goes back up to the machine room, okay? And the wiring again depends. Now this is one of the things again when we get into more into the sales and estimating end of it is that where do these signals actually reside? Some of the controllers that have serial communication, they terminate on the car top. Okay, so these signals actually stay here and they send that information over serial communication. So what happens that you need to have additional wires in your traveling cable to be able to access those switches to the door lock monitoring unit in the machine room. Okay. So one of the things is to verify, obviously, where are these signals located and terminated? Are they on the car top only? Are they accessible in the machine room? Because that obviously depends on the contractor if he needs to have additional wiring and new traveling cable to get those signals back to the control room. Okay? So one of the things that we always try to stress is when a customer asks about door lock monitoring is the survey. Surveying is very important, where all of these signals are on every controller obviously has it in different scenario. Now this is the one for testing for fire service. This is more for the guys in tech support, and this is applicable for any control system, whether it be Galaxy or non-Galaxy controller. And this is the one that the DOB has instituted here that makes it different from the national code for door lock monitoring. These are the 3 tests. The first test, what they do is they have the elevator somewhere up the shaft on automatic operation, and they create a fault condition. Doors are open, somebody bypasses the door lock, the elevator shuts down the way it's supposed to. Now somebody goes in there and they hit the phase 1 key switch. Now, right? What should happen? Car will not recall. Okay, the car should stay shut down on out of service. Okay, so it's not going to be able to recall the elevator. So if the car's an automatic, happens to have a fault condition, and the fireman initiates the phase 1 recall, the elevator will not recall. Second test that they do. They recall the elevator normally on fire phase 1. The fireman gets inside the elevator, he puts it on phase 2, and then he takes it to another landing, someplace else. Now the door is open. Okay. Now the landing doors are bypassed. Okay. The car door is now disengaged from the landing door, so now we detect the fault. Okay. Meaning that the hall doors are made, but not the car doors. What should happen? The car is still allowed to run on phase 2 under that condition. Okay? So if you have a condition on phase 2 away from the recall floor and the landing door is made up, but the car door is open, you are still allowed to run on fire phase 2. Be able to put another call in and allowed to close the doors. Okay? But that's only for if the landing door is made and not the gate switch. If it's the other way around, meaning that the gate switch, the car door is made, but the hall door is in the open position, then we shut down on phase 2. Right? And that's what the DOB is actually checking for. And the last part of the test is if you happen to be away from the recall floor and you turn off the fire phase 2, it's supposed to go ahead and do a phase 1 recall back to the landing. Okay? So again, if we have a condition fault where we have the hall doors engaged and the car doors open, and we turn the phase 2 key switch to the off, you're allowed to bring the car back to the phase 1 recall. So these are the 3 tests that the fire service, the DOB does to verify the fire service emergency on the door lock monitoring feature. All right, that's pretty much in a nutshell. Any questions?
Can you repeat everything?
Sure. This, yeah.
So the ASF
E.
guidelines are not mandatory?
They are. In New York City?
New York opted not to?
Yeah, what New York City does is they take the latest, whatever ANSI code that the national country follows, and they just pick and choose what they want to follow. And then they have their own RS-18, which is their own code just for New York City. Okay? So they says, we don't want to follow what everybody else follows. We're going to follow 80% of it, 90% of it, whatever. And we're going to just change it based on what we want it.
And that's okay.
That's New York City, yep.
Every state,
And you have other states that do that as well.
and they don't have to adopt it.
Right.
When they come out with
Comes
the
out.
code, they don't have to adopt it
Right.
until they want to.
Do you want to, right.
So most states are not up to the.
Right.
Usually the
Some-
priority is municipality, state.
Right.
national.
Right.
What makes this unique is that New York chose to make this retroactive. Often codes will come in, and as of this date, you follow the code. With the nature of the accident that Peter described, New York thought it was serious enough that they said, not only is it for all new elevators, but you have to go to every
Back.
operating elevator in the city. And it's rather unprecedented in terms of the scope of getting this done.
Right.
One thing, Pete, you have to get a PE stamp for putting it in on older equipment. Are we going to be hiring a bunch of PEs to stamp all the diagrams and lines?
Well, that's still to be determined. So, yeah. Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, so you mentioned Galaxy 3s and
Yep.
Galaxy 4s. It's a matter of a software change.
Correct.
1 and 2s, it's a hardware change.
Yeah, we have to install one of these
Correct.
panels.
Okay, so out of the Galaxy 3s and Galaxy 4s, how many do we have of Galaxy 3s and 4s in New York City? that
A lot.
require a software change?
A lot. Anything pretty much from when did we do
Yeah,
Galaxy
the
3?
count is 40,000. How many of the 40,000 are we?
Oh, can't tell you with that. I mean, we have to see all the Galaxy 3s from what, 2003? I think we started 4? Yeah,
7,000.
yeah, yeah.
So out of the 7,000, then that means that we would just have a software change.
Correct.
That would be the other 30-something thousand, and we have the potential of having the full month.
Correct.
Okay, second question is, you mentioned the input voltages of 24 volts to 250. Some of the older GL controllers are actually...
Right.
Now, you also mentioned that the input card is the same as the MOV card. If it's the same card, I don't believe we're going to have an issue with it. I don't know
Well,
for sure.
there's actually a redesign on the MOVFR input cards that actually Kai had worked on that's going to be able to push to 300 volts input.
Okay, yeah, so we covered
So,
that.
correct. So, yeah, the existing one might be able to be capped at 265, but the new ones will be able to go up as high as 300 volts.
As far as the DPM connection, some of the older door operators don't have the
Right.
DPM. So will they have to also add this additional?
We're going to be using a door close limit, the DCL. Every controller usually has a door open limit and a door close limit.
As the DPM?
Correct.
Okay.
So by code, you have to have door close limit engaged in order to run.
Two more questions. The survey itself?
Yes.
Is that something that we're providing now to our customers, or?
Well, I've made up a survey sheet that I send to the customers that they fill out, you know, in terms of information for the building and where these signals are located. One of the things we have to have, obviously, is a set of schematics of the existing controllers. That's one of the requirements we have to have and review to make sure.
And the last question I have is, who is our competition for this?
A couple of them cropped up, and initially it was Electrodyne. They have a relay logic-based system. Now you have Clada, who have a PLC-based, and then Adams, out of Chicago. They have one that also is a PLC-based. Ones that are now also offering. Motion has it, but for their equipment though only. For the legacy products though, because they're not able to do their hardware, software upgrades on the older controllers
So
in
out of all
Motion.
the competitors, where are we as far as getting this to the industry? Are we lagging them? Are we the leader? Or?
It's hard because right now it's up to the customer and the contractor to push this product. And that's been the big obstacle, is for the contractor to go to the building saying, you got to get this done now. So therefore the response has been very slow at best. Okay, so we're in the mix.
New York contractors, maybe 70 people. 200 plus, right, plus. And I think there are maybe 3 or 4 people raise their hand saying they've spoken.
Yeah. So a lot of the contractors, again, it's like the last thing, well, I'm going to worry about it when the time comes. So we're just trying to put some urgencies in these contractors to say, listen, when it comes 2020, DOB's stand is this. When we had a meeting with them about a year and a half ago, is that after 2020, if the elevators don't comply, they're going to go ahead and shut them down. So are they going to shut down all these elevators? It's a game of chicken, I guess, of who's going to blink first. Yeah. Right.
So
Right.
the contractors who put out proposals, many of our customers, for the last year, year and a half, have been putting out
Waiting.
proposals, but the buildings.
No bites.
Signed and authorized work.
Yeah.
How many have we sold?
We got maybe about a dozen. Yeah. So far. Yeah.
So out of the remaining 33,000, what is our target goal for GAL by 2020?
How many of those?
Yeah, do we have like a target goal of what share of this market?
It's hard.
If we look at the share, there's a lot of different questions.
Yeah.
If you look at 40,000, there's 2 ways to look at the opportunity. We would subtract that opportunity.
Right.
We look at our competitors and their footprint in the market. If I said that the opportunity realistically is more like 25,000, and that we had a third of that, there's still 8,000 to 10,000 units that we could sell if we were being pragmatic about it. So it's a tremendous opportunity.
Very good, thank you.
Okay. Any other question?
We don't get many requests, adding the full monitor to the relay logic controllers, correct? Not many people add
To our relay logic or just in general?
to our relay logic.
Not to ours. I mean, we're getting a lot of quotes, interest on other foreign products, Dover, Otis, Swift, The only one that we've been doing so far, which we might be doing a lot, is Parkchester, where I think they're like over like 200-300 units. Mix of PLC and relay logic. The relay logics are being modernized with Galaxy 4s, but they want to keep the PLCs and want to add door-lock monitoring. And then you're talking about 150 units, that alone.
Yeah, to add to
So-
that question is that we really don't even know how many of our older relay logic are still in service. They've all a lot of them are already replaced, because we're talking about over 30 years worth of legacy, past legacy.
And also, I guess, a lot of people don't comply because you don't have that many inspectors to go and inspect and see, right?
Well, that'll be the other issue, because right now it has to be inspected by the DOB. So now, obviously, when the time comes close to the deadline, then that's going to be an issue. Is the DOB going to be able to handle the inspection? Probably not. Probably have to be self-certified. So yeah. So there's still a lot of open-ended questions, obviously, as we go through this here. Yeah, John.
Yeah, Peter, I'm intrigued. We've got Galaxy 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know who we've sold them to in New York, and why can't we go for them rather than wait for them to come to us?
It's very limited, I think, in G1 and 2 in the city. Handful at best, I would imagine, I think. I mean, Rick might be able to shed some light on that.
Yeah, it's a handful.
It's a handful, that we can look into.
Switched over.
Yeah.
The initial installers have gone to somebody else now, they're under somebody else's maintenance.
Right.
So we don't have a track easily to the.
What about 3 and 4 then?
Well, 3 and 4, we have that information, but again, it's a software upgrade, so they've been coming
Yeah.
in for that a little more readily.
Yeah.
Right, and it's the same story, it could have gone to another contractor, so we don't know who.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been 6 years ago, Centennial put it in, and Nuvo now has it maintenance. So, yeah. I mean, we try to tell a lot of these, where they get caught is when they do what they call Category 1 and Category 5 testing, yearly or 5-year tests. And then they go there and they actually test door lock monitoring. A lot of contractors don't know they have to comply with, and then guess what? They fail. Contact us, by the way, I did this test, it did not comply, and then we provide them obviously with the software upgrade. So we try to tell the contractor, listen, you got to, update them when you do your next Category 1 or Category 5 testing, because they test that.
I don't know if they're ever
I believe we sent it.
it was sent to all our customers.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, what they've been doing is they've been going through and submitting to the building saying, you need this, you need that. They're not getting
Right.
the order back, so they're not doing it. So it's a bad situation.
Yeah. There's no urgency on the building.
Yeah, the buildings have no.
They says-
They've been told, they've been getting,
Yeah.
bulletins for their.
And if- yeah.
DOT's been going out saying it has to be done.
Yeah.
And there's been very little
Activity.
activity on the building's part to
Yeah.
sign the contracts and say.
Yeah. I mean, even consultants have been pushing their customers' buildings, you got to do this, you got to do this, and they're having a hard time to get in the building to get on board with this. So,
I think there's a false sense that they feel the DOB to an extent. That
Right.
There's a, dreamer sense that.
Yeah.
So the-
Because- yeah. Yeah, because this mandate for the retrofitting came out in 2014. That's when the DOB came out, and that's when the clock actually started ticking, was in 2014. So they said,
Are they going to introduce like summonses if they don't comply?
Well-
How does that even work?
from some of them, in that one meeting that we were, they said, well, if they don't comply, what they do is they shut them down right then and then. Lock tag and shut it down. Yeah,
Right, they haven't decided.
but,
We're not going to shut down 40,000.
right. Exactly.
Well, the galaxies, they don't have to show.
Yeah,
Well, the galaxies aren't even included.
Right.
yeah, yeah. Right. Okay. Any other questions? I know.
That's the question. Will you be one for one? They may not shut down 40, but you may be one of those that doesn't shut down.
Yeah.
So that's the risk.
Yeah. Like I said, I think it's a game of chicken, see who's going to blink first, the contractor or DOB. We'll have to wait and see. Right. For this.
So
Correct.
what type of service is GL going to be offering these customers that get the fault monitor? Let's say on the legacy relay logic control, they're going to be getting back their diagrams marked up with instruction sets
The
on
i-
how to wire it.
The idea is going to be, get a set of prints, we will mark them up.
Yeah, number of
modify-
wires required in the hoistway, number of wires
Correct.
required from the car.
Right. Like Rick was saying, well, for GL product, they don't have to be stamped, okay, by a PE or a registered architect, okay? One of the requirements is that any alterations done on a controller, not by the original equipment manufacturer, has to be modified and stamped. So any relay logic or PLC GL, we don't have to worry about that, just modifying the prints, but which we still have to provide for that, okay? But yeah, we would mark them up, send to the customer, and yeah, for that.
For the 3, we're looking at a software update. I'd say that's a pretty fast turnaround. For the 1 and 2, what type of a turnaround are we looking at?
Well, the panel, we were talking about the panel.
The panel.
Correct. So, I mean, most likely we'll have the prints.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're getting these now mass-produced, so you're talking maybe about 3 weeks,
3 weeks.
4 weeks. Depends, yeah.
So the customer's back's against the wall, we're looking at 3 weeks.
Average. Well, it depends. It can change too, depending on the volume, obviously. Once things pick up, that can change in a hurry.
Increasing.
Absolutely. So, I mean, this is something where the floodgate can open any moment.
But right now, it's a 3.
Right now, about average 3 weeks, correct, from soup to nuts, once we get all the data and everything in from the
Right.
customer. Correct.
And that's including their markup drawings and
Yeah.
wire runs
Yeah.
requirements?
Correct. I mean, once we're going to start building a database, because they're going to be repetitive, we're going to be doing a bunch of Swifts, we already have them, a bunch of this one, motion, or whatever. So the initial stage is going to be obviously the work, but then once we get an archive and library, it will make that somewhat easier.
And can the customer buy just the product and not the service of the update markup?
You know what, that hasn't been discussed. Can they buy the panel? They can, but then they're pretty much on their own and how they're going to wire it up and, interface, but I don't think that was a discussion about how we're going to handle that.
Just so you know, there has been a single customer.
Yeah.
Right, and the reason why I asked the question is that a lot of the legacy parts, there are no prints left. So how do we handle that? You know?
Can't. I mean, that was the question that was brought to the DOB. What happens to the job? Well, their default was that, well, they're in violation. You have to have prints on the job site.
Oh, okay.
So that was their stance. Because we brought that question to the DOB. What happens if you don't have prints for a
Yeah,
job?
the reason why I asked that is that guys have contacted us and say, well, yeah, we have prints, but they're not for this job. And the way the old relay logic was, it was unique per job.
Oh, yeah.
There was always something different about
Well,
what they did per job.
most manufacturers have a job-specific prints.
Right.
And that was the same question we brought to the DOB. What happens if you want to have controller from building A, which is the same as building B?
Right.
Right? Can I take the prints from one, even though it's the same vintage controller, and use them on another building?
Right.
They were also hesitant, and they didn't really give us an answer. That's
By current code, if you don't have job-specific prints on the job, you're in
a violation, period.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, that was,
Yes.
Probably, half the jobs out there.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
relay logic, for sure.
Pretty much. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Very good.
Any other questions? All right, folks. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.